Okay, hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Victor, and I'm going to be your anchor for this training. So today, we're going to be looking at software development life cycle. So this training is especially for software developers, web designers, digital marketers, for UI UX designers, for quality assurance, intermediate or beginner or expert level specialists. As for anybody involved in or people doing branding, if you're starting a career in actually starting up or maintaining or deploying any form of application or digital asset, this is very critical. This is very important. So make sure you watch from the beginning to end. I'm going to be talking about several things you need to understand with respect to how do you make sure that you start a project and you finish it. And this has a whole lot to do with project management, to do with even business analysis. So because these are very related concepts you find for anybody that is going to be involved in making a website or software or application go live. Now, we're going to look at what software development lifecycle is all about. Then we try to see that we get those concepts and those learnings to help us meet customer expectation, reach completion deadline, of course, within cost, time, and budget, of course, which is what project management is about. So this is just a way to run your software or your web projects. Okay, so what is software development lifecycle? So it's that process that helps you to design, develop, and test quality softwares. So how do you make sure that if you have to create a website for a bank or a website for a school, a website for a laundry company, you want to make sure that you're able to, from the very beginning, from the very first stage, you want to be able to gather their requirements, understand what they need, design, develop, test, and also launch that particular application. So the entire process is what we call the software development life cycle. And the question is, why do we need to do software development, or why do we need to understand software development life cycle, or why do we need to make sure that our development processes are top-notch? They follow some standards, they follow some frameworks, they follow some guidelines. Is that we want to make sure that we produce high-quality software. So look at any abandoned project, any abandoned application, any digital media that starts and doesn't finish, or doesn't meet customer expectation, or doesn't even reach the completion time frames or cost requirements. You now have an overestimation. It then means the team that is actually handling that did not follow some of these processes we want to learn. So you call that software development life cycle. And this is a framework that details all of the different tasks that you need to perform at each step in trying to create your website, software, application, mobile app. Now, the ISO standard that is for software development cycle is called 12207. They used to have a 2008 version, but I think the most recent is 2017. So they define it as what helps you to standardize all the different tasks. Take, for instance, you want to build a website, or you want to build a software or a mobile app. There are several steps you need to take, and we want to learn about that. And the advantages that are bound if you follow the process, and if you skip the process, you're going to have issues. You're going to have issues with the client not being satisfied. You're going to have issues with you not meeting to the budget that you have. You now see yourself shooting above the budget, or you see yourself expanding or extending in the time, or you see yourself not taking into consideration all of the different stakeholders that you need to consider for the project to be successful. So this involves a detailed plan that describes how you're going to develop, how you're going to maintain, how you even do replacements, or there's what we call but in project management at times we call it change log. You can have a log, a document that have all of the different adjustments or changes that a client might propose in you trying to develop your application, or you trying to develop his or her application, or the sponsor's application. Because there are some features you might want to have in, take for instance, in a laundry management system. You want to build a a software that is to help an organization manage the laundry process. So it's a company that does laundry, that does ironing, that does, you could get your shirts, your jeans, your bed wears, all of the things you have that are in cloth form that you want them to maybe wash or dry clean or clean up for you, or maybe your rugs and the rest. So that's what the company does. So if you need to create the software or the mobile app for that particular company, we're trying to say that there's a process to follow. If it is just even if it's just a website, there's a process to follow. Now, you have different flavors to what the process looks like, but they are very definite processes that you cannot skip. It starts from planning, right? You want to plan and decide what do you want to be. Take, for instance, somebody meets me and say, okay, Mr. Victor or Saltec, I want you to develop let's say, an e-learning management system, or I want to develop something in-house that we can use for staff training and staff KPI tracking, that's key performance index tracking. For you to be able to do that particular application, one of the first thing you want to do, you want to put all of the teams together and start doing some planning, in-house planning and planning with the other end of the team. Then you need to start doing some defining. In some processes, this is just an image to demonstrate to you the processes. In some processes, this is skipped out. Then from planning, you move to designing. But you can still add this, because in defining, we try to do the requirements gathering. That's to say that we list all of the different features, all of the things that we want to make sure that that particular software is able to do. If it's a website, all of the kind of things that we want the website to be able to do. If it's a website or if it's an application, a mobile app, there are a few concepts you need to understand as a software developer, a UI/UX designer, a business analyst, or a project manager working in tech. Now, you have what we call functional applications or functional websites or functional softwares. Now, we also what we call e-business processes. Or let me just even start from the simple word e-business. So e-business is that applying technology to the different business processes. So what are the different business processes? Things like buying, selling, shipping, recruitment, marketing, the regular invoicing, all of the things you do in your regular business. Now, if you now take and automate these processes, that's what you call e-business, electronic business. So you no longer do marketing by pasting banners and flyers on the walls or go to radio. You now do that online through social media platforms and other digital media. For instance, for recruitment, you no longer go to radio or put it on newspaper or use the normal conventional traditional means to do that. You now put it or create an e-recruitment system or list the job on an e-recruitment portal. Payments, no longer collect cash, but you now integrate payments on the application or on the software on your website. So you are not doing e-business. So e-business is typically digitizing your business processes. Now, when you've done planning, at the point of you defining, you're trying to look at what are the kind of business processes that this organization have. For instance, for the laundry system, that you want to make sure you infuse into that particular software. That way, you're creating a functional application. And if you want the sort of called software maturity, maybe I'll do a separate video on that. If you need your software, if you need your application to actually mature on time, maturity, I mean, it now meets the needs of whoever that's going to use it. You need to spend a lot of time in planning and doing requirements gathering and also do some gap analysis. Gap analysis, I mean, you want to check, especially for applications that already exist, you want to check what you have and what you don't have that might be needed, and you can learn that from other standard apps. And of course, see how that infuses and how that integrates to the business. Because if a software, if a website, if an application does not meet the needs of a business, then it's going to be abandoned. And once it gets abandoned, it then means that it might not last long, or it might be rejected, or another solution is going to be sought after. And one of the reasons why you want to follow the software development cycle framework is that you want to make sure that everybody that needs to contribute to the success of the project, it's part of that, part of that planning, I'm part of that defining stage. In another video, I'm going to look at requirements gathering, because this is for BAs or business analysts. At times, software developers can also be in that team that will help you gather requirements for your software. Then you want to start designing. So this is where the UI UX guys come in. They now do the user interfaces. This is what the screen of the homepage is going to look like. This is what the screen of the this is what the login screen, this is what the payments interface is going to look like. If I want to check out, this is what it's going to look like. And in UX, user experience, we want to see how that play out on different interfaces, different mobile phones, on different browsers, and what kind of interaction will I be able to have, and how easy is it for me to navigate? What's the experience like? Is it intuitive? Do I need to struggle to be able to navigate from one aspect of the application or the website to the other? So the UI UX design guys come here to design all of the things that have been defined. And most of the time, they might do some UMLs, some user model diagrams. They can create all of those things to help you see the flow of the application then before it's been designed. Then at building stage, the developer come in. So the developers as a team, they come in to develop what has been agreed at the planning, defining, and designing stage. Then in testing, quality assurance experts, they come in and they try to test all of the things we've atomized here. If it's a website, let's say the website is a consulting firm website. And our planning will say, okay, this and this and this and this is what we want to do. Our defining will now atomize them, put them pen on paper, or it's typed out. These are the requirements we need. It's been designed, the mock-up is done, it's been developed. At this stage, we want to now start testing. All of the things that we said we're going to do at this stage, are they done? Have they been completed? So that's quality assurance. That's software testing. So if it's a large team, they might have a different team doing software testing, software quality assurance. Then DevOps guys, anybody that does DevOps or that tries to look at the different operations of the different teams and how can we make sure that we constantly deploy and we have a seamless deployment process. They come in. And if it's a very small team, you can have just 2-3 persons doing all of this. If it's a very large team, you can have 10 persons, 2 persons, 5 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons. You can have a very large team. So it all depends on how small or how big or how integrated that team is. So everybody plays a role. And at each stage, depending on the type of software development lifecycle framework you are using, there are different types. You have the hybrid, the agile, the waterfall, and all of that. We'll talk about that later on, or I can do that in a separate video. Depending on the type of framework you use, will tell how rigid this process looks like. Now, let me explain each of the steps in detail. I've already done that in the previous slide. So in planning and requirement analysis, what do? You typically, which is the most important and fundamental stage, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it's important and can be performed by very senior members of the team. That's why if you want to do BA, if you want to do, because this is mostly the job of a BA, the BA is the guy that's in between software teams or software developers or the in-house team and the client. So BA guys are going to help gather requirements, do some gap analysis, and be able to help create a solution, because at this point, your goal is to make sure that whatever software, whatever application, whatever mobile app, whatever solution, whatever thing you're trying to create, you want to make sure that it meets a need. And that is why at times you might be conducting some feasibility study reports, operational, technical, economic, even legal. For the past 10, 12 years, people come to me and at times they want to create some kind of solutions of kind of project. And they might not understand the legal requirements for some kind of project or some licenses they need to get. Take for example, somebody wants to do something in payments. And he doesn't understand that he needs, depending on your country where you're watching this video from, if you're in the UK, if you're in the US, if you're in Nigeria, if you're in Ghana, if you're in South Africa, depending on where, your country is going to have the central bank or the reserve bank. So that bank is going to have different types of license, aggregators, processors, and whoever that's going to deal on maybe infrastructure, that's going to deal on settlement and all of that. So depending on where this application you want to build falls into, that would tell the kind of license you need to get or who you're going to piggyback on. Maybe you want to build your, let's say somebody that wants to build that the laundry software I talked about. It then means that once people come to your website, they order the kind of service they need to pay. So if they need to pay, you're not a payment processor. It then means you're going to piggyback on another payment processor. Some countries, they allow betting. They allow multi-level marketing. Some countries do, their CBN, their reserve banks allow that. They just have some frameworks and some guidelines. Same thing with lottery. Some countries, they don't allow that. So you cannot even create such kind of website and integrate payment. It's just a matter of days, that site is going to be banned. They will not allow you to collect payments since it's something that the central bank or the reserve bank or those payment processors cannot even do. So at this plan and requirement stage, you need to look at this text here. It says, it is performed by senior members of the team. Of course, juniors can do this. Juniors can contribute to the team, especially experienced juniors, and get input from customers, sales department, market surveys, domain experts. So at this point, so somebody can bring up an idea, but it doesn't meet some kind of technical feasibility, it doesn't meet some kind of economic. Somebody just came into the office, I think that was 2-3 months ago. By the time he laid out all his plans, I told him some of the details and some of the costs and the viability. Because that's what you look at in feasibility. You look at, is this a feasible idea? Is it going to make economic sense? Will I be able to make profit after considering all of the costs associated with it? At the end of the day, I proposed something similar, something else, and not what he was looking at. Because he was looking at a short-term plan, and I said, this is not the kind of software you develop at a short-time basis. So in planning and requirement, you do all of that because you want to minimize risks, right? You want to minimize risks. And in some cases, in my experience, you might even contract a business analyst or you do some feasibility study report just to make sure that you are actually doing a project that is going to make sense at the end of the day. So everybody is needed in the team to plan and to say, what do we need to create the software? What do we need to create this website? Then, but for very basic websites, you don't need too much of meetings back and forth. The client's just saying, okay, this is what I need, how many pages I need. It's majorly informational, and I want to collect payments on the website. Then it wouldn't need all of the stuff I've been talking about. The next stage is you want to gather requirements. So this is what we call software requirement specification, or we call it functional requirement document. Functional requirement document. So it's just a detailed document that states all of the different things the software or the website or the app is going to do. If somebody comes and say, I want you to develop a website for me, that it doesn't end there. You have to state what kind of users are you going to have? What is the admin? What kind of things will the admin be able to do? What kind of things will the user be able to do? Do you have just one type of user or do you have different types of user? Take, for instance, for an e-commerce website, now you're going to have the admin, you're going to have the user. You can have maybe an author, somebody that's going to be able to come and put something. Then you might have a sales manager. The sales manager is not the admin. So he's going to be able to do something slightly different from what the admin is able to do. He won't have all the rights, all the privileges, right? So when you're creating softwares, you need to lay out all different requirements for the different sections of the different, use cases for the application. When we mean use case, we're trying to say, if, let's take a school website for an example. A school website is going to have, and I'm going to see if I can have another time to do an explanation and do some case studies for, what do you call it again? For, let's say, technical, I've forgotten what the word is again. Okay, if I remember it, I'll talk about it. So you want to make sure you just have all the list of the things that you want the application to be able to do for you. So this is what it looks like. So users of a requirement document. So who is going to help us provide input for a requirement document? So the customers. So you specify the requirements and read to make sure that this is what the customer needs to be able to do on the site or the application. Managers, use the requirements documents to plan a bid for the system and to plan system development processes. Because if you have a very good requirement document, it helps typically everybody. It helps the customer to be able to check all of these things atomized, have they been done? It helps the manager to be able to plan for future upgrades. If you don't have a very robust requirement document, it's difficult to plan for upgrades. It's difficult to do integration testing. Of course, system engineers, system test engineers, then system maintenance engineer. So that document is going to help you that list all of the different functions of the website, will help all of these persons be able to make decisions towards the growth of the application. Then what do you do next? You design, right? So this is where modeling comes in. This is where UI UX comes in. So because this is based on the requirements gathering you've done. So what does a software requirements specification document looks like? Because this requirements, software requirements specification is something that you're going to be adjusting from time to time. Because you can have version 1, you can have version 2, you can have version 3, you can have version 4. You can have version 1 after the first meeting, midway before development, you have version 2. Before development, you have version 3, right? After the launch, you might have some changes, you now have version 3. So a software requirement document will have the introduction, what's the purpose of the software, what's the scope, abbreviations, references, overviews, specific requirements, user requirements, system requirements, some appendix, and maybe some external links on other projects that look like what you're trying to develop. In another video, I'm going to do some, let's say, case studies of different requirements gathering or different requirement documents and explain them. I think that will help. I also go to do different UI UX and explain them. So if you're new to the channel or if you're a subscribe member, make sure you share this video. If you like what you're listening to, make sure you subscribe and share to other persons that are interested in tech, that are into either software, UI UX, business analysis, tech project management, and all of that. Now, once you've done all that, the next stage is for you to now build. So this is where the developers come in. So they can be developing in PHP, in Node.js, in Java, it can be any of the JavaScript framework or whatever. Whatever framework they are using to develop whatever, it's going to be based on. So that's why the process tells you that you don't get a brief for a project and start coding. No, it's wrong. It's a wrong approach. Because that way, you're going to have a lot of back and forth and you can have an abandoned project. So the goal of this training is to help you understand that there's a process, there's a framework, there's a guideline. If you look at, if you have time, check out the ISO 122707 2017 document. Just Google it, check the document, and you see an outline detail of, it just expatiates on all of the things I'm discussing here. So we're saying that if you don't plan, do requirements gathering, do UI UX, have a functional document, then before you start coding, we're saying that you might have a flawed project. One of the reasons why I like following the process over the years is that you're going to have the buy-in of the customer. You're going to have the buy-in of the project sponsor because they have contributed from the very start to the end of the project. And even if it takes longer, the idea is there that everybody is being considered in the project and actually developing what the client needs. But you see some developers or some companies, they want to create an application. Once they get the brief, they go ahead and start developing. And I know we did, they come back and say we are done. Okay, how far the project? We're still developing, we're still working. How far the project? We're still developing, we're still working. And at the end of the project, what you have is a very flawed project because the customer does not have any input. The customer have a different view about what he wants developed. Okay, then of course you test. Your testing is going to be based on what you have in the requirements gathering. So you look at the requirement document, all of the things you said you wanted to achieve. you start testing them, you start tracking them, you start seeing if you have some defects, some pages are not working well. In my user experience, I said, okay, if I log in, I land on this page, from this page, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Once you cannot be able to do all of those things, that's when you now go back to the developer, start fixing those things. So if you follow a framework in your organization or as a team, it helps you to even project manage all of your deliveries. But if you just get a brief and start developing and ship to client is going to, you're going to have so many dirty back and forths, and it can hamper the end result of the project. Then of course you now deploy. And of course, before you want to deploy, you want to do UAT. So UAT is at this stage that you now give to the client to now start doing testing. So the client start looking at the initial meeting you guys held, or the ones you held in between the development, and now see, have they done all the things we say they should do? Then does it meet our business requirements? Does it meet our targets? Does it solve the problem we intended to solve? Because softwares are meant to solve problems. Once your software or your website or your application is not solving problems, it's not digitizing a business or taking off, doing heavy lifting, that website, even if it's a website that's hosted on a regular platform, if you did an initial hosting for like a year, I bet you after 1 year, that project is going to be packed up. So if you want to create projects that are going to stand the test of time, if you want to create websites, applications, softwares that are going to stand the test of time, make sure that you follow through the process and you're going to create something that everybody is going to have acceptance for, and that's going to make sure that the project stays in the market for long. And if there are issues, you can easily come back to your software requirements document and see what the issues are, and you can always upgrade. Because if you follow through the process, you're going to do something meaningful at the end of the day. Okay, let's look at this. I love using this image when I train students on software development or on project management or on business analysis, especially for those that are into tech, because it gives you an idea about what the process is if you need to create a software, if you need to create a website. Now, if you look at the upper part of the image, those are the designers or the team tags. The things you have below are for the project sponsor. When you have these dots, they are milestones. Involvement has to do with, if you see it's an oval kind of shape that is small, it then means the involvement is kind of little. The importance, the text format, if you see it in small words, that means it's of least important. If you see it in bigger words, it's of great importance. Just like this one now, very, very important. If your client does not review your project, the project is yours. It's not for the client yet. So most developers or most startups or most companies or most teams, they do that mistake. They get a brief and they run away and start coding, right? They get a brief, this client discovery, a discovery meeting. They don't even do needs assessment. They don't even do some research. They just skip and jump and start coding. And tell the client, please come and test. We are done. So what's going to happen is that the client is going to say, but this is not what we wanted. I think we wanted, you see, you didn't carry them along in all of the process I talked about. So the image is very explanatory. You can pause it and take a screenshot. It just involves discovery. Then the designer does this assessment, does the research, he develops site map and frameworks. The client has to review. You don't want the client to be shocked at the end of the day when you are populating the content of the site or where you are launching the site. Then, of course, you do the outline based on your research, based on your gap analysis. The client is to develop content, except the client is paying for content development. If the client is sponsoring content development, then if your team is good at copywriting, they can draft that and give to the client to review. Then your mockup or your template that you've created, the client reviews that, you start coding. At least all of the planning and designing is done from this stage backwards. Then, of course, you code, populate the site content. You do quality assurance and cross-browser testing. You want to test. I've seen situations whereby you have a website, do well on Chrome, but it's not doing well on Edge, on Safari or other browsers, or do well on desktop, that is on laptop, on tablet, but it's not doing well on mobile. So it's not mobile responsive. It's not a responsive site. And a responsive site is a site that have that adapts to different screen sizes. It can be screen, large screen, it can be laptop, it can be tablet, it can be mobile. So for those different four types of screens, it can adapt, and you can just do a vertical scroll. You don't need to scroll horizontally. So of course, after that, once the client has accepted and signed off, then you can now launch. So once you follow this process, and the time frame, it mustn't be 8 weeks, it can be 2 weeks, it can be 1 week, it can be 6 months, it can be 9 months, depending on how detailed and how complex the project is. Okay, that's all. I'll see you in the next episode, where I'm going to be looking at business analysis and see how that interfaces with software developers. Thank you. Don't forget to like. If you have questions, you can comment in the comment section. Catch up.